Hello and welcome to the Jewish Life Cycles class, episode 11. Today's class is about the bar mitzvah. I didn't have too many questions about a bat mitzvah, so I assume everybody understands that all clear and perfectly. All right. Maybe not the guy outside, but that's different. All right. So the bar mitzvah. I'm sure you've all been to bar mitzvahs before, and I'm sure you have your own ideas. Some of you have made bar mitzvahs, and I'm sure you have your own ideas of what a bar mitzvah is or what it isn't, what it should be, what it shouldn't be. In this class, we focus on the halacha. What does the Jewish law say about bar mitzvah? And you'll be surprised to learn not very much. The bar mitzvah is more or less an ancient idea, but celebrating it is rather recent, and especially the way we do it nowadays. We'll talk more about that as we get to it, but certainly the bar mitzvah is not celebrated the way that it used to be. So let's get and I think by the end of the class, I think we'll all understand the statement that we mentioned from Rav Moshe Feinstein last week, where he said in Igrod Moshe, where he said that if it were up to him, he would nullify bar mitzvahs altogether. He would stop the whole custom from beginning to end. And I think by the time we get to the end of this class, I think we'll understand why. So let's begin at the beginning. This is a life cycles class. That's why we're going from step to step, and this is we're up to bar mitzvah. That means the boy has turned 13. When a boy turns 13, something happens. According to halakha, according to physiology, according to psychology, according to just about any kind of rational thinking, there's a distinct difference between a 12-year-old boy and a 13-year-old boy, usually. And amongst other things, one of the differences is in the Jewish law, this person is now considered completely obligated in all of the mitzvot that any other man is obligated in doing. He is completely a man for all intents and purposes. So he is now obligated in all of the mitzvot that hopefully his parents have been training him in. And that includes praying 3 times a day, saying Shema, as we've been learning about in the Mishnah and Brachot, right? Everything, any mitzvah you can think of, Shabbat, every mitzvah you can think of, every obligation that's in the Torah that a man can do, this 13-year-old boy really is now obligated in doing. So it's a big responsibility, and it would be a shame. It would be sad, really, if we threw this upon somebody, when they're 12 years old and 364 days, right? So tomorrow you have to do everything. Up to now, you have to do nothing, more or less, and now you have to do everything. So obviously, from an early age, part of educating a son is to teach him that eventually, when you're 13, you'll be obligated in this. You'll be obligated in that. You don't have to do it now, but you have the obligation. By the way, children under 13, girls under 12 are obligated also in a separate mitzvah called the mitzvah of chinuch. We talked about this mitzvah in terms of the parent's obligation, how the parent is supposed to train their child. But it's also important to understand that the child is obligated too. The child has an obligation to learn chinuch, to try to learn the mitzvot as best as they can. That's part of what a parent tries to train the child in, to understand this huge obligation of accepting mitzvot. And of course, it would be completely incorrect to train the child in a way that this is like something ominous and scary, like, ooh, all the mitzvahs are going to just fall on your head when you're 13, when you're 12. So that's not how we train them. We want them to love mitzvot. And we talked about that before. Mitzvot are an opportunity to come close to Hashem. Somebody asked on Shabbat, somebody said, we started the Mishnayot. We said, there's a mitzvah to say Shema. And somebody said, what if you don't say Shema? So I joked, I said, you get hit by lightning. Obviously not, right? You don't get hit by lightning every time you don't do a mitzvah. A mitzvah isn't just a good deed. A mitzvah from the word tzava means it's an obligation. We are being obligated in doing it. And part of that obligation is the more we do the mitzvot, the more there's going to be a connection between us and Hashem. That's the whole lot of life. That's pretty much the end. You could say that in every class, every parsha class, every halacha class, every Jewish life cycles, ascent to harmony, whatever class you're giving. We could just say all mitzvot are supposed to help you bond closer to Hashem. How that happens, does it always happen? That's a different question. You can say, I did a mitzvah and I don't feel any closer to Hashem. And so there's something to discuss over there. But the idea is that when you do a mitzvah, when you do a command of Hashem, you're listening to him, you're making him real. Not that he's not real, God forbid, otherwise, but he's more in your life, he's more of a presence in this world by you fulfilling the mitzvot. And that's our goal in life. According to the Ramchal and others, that's the base, that's the theme of Derech Hashem and other works of the Ramchal. But that's what we talked about in the introduction to this class. So, how do you celebrate a bar mitzvah? So let me tell you how you don't celebrate a bar mitzvah. First, I promised myself I wasn't gonna rant and rave about this, but let me tell you, as a mashgiach sometimes at bar mitzvahs, and I'm not referring to any bar mitzvahs I was recently mashgiach in, but I'm not excluding that either. A bar mitzvah is not supposed to be a disco party, right? It's not supposed to be an opportunity for boys and girls to just like dance and go crazy, show off their latest threads and listen to the latest party music. That's not what a bar mitzvah is supposed to be. Kosher food doesn't make the event kosher all by itself. The event has to be organized to be an event that somehow focuses on a mitzvah, on the fact that this boy is now obligated in mitzvot. Not something like, let's just have a party because we like good food. There's a place for good food, but it's not at a lavish bar mitzvah. There's probably some of the books I'm going to be quoting from today are probably going to talk about that as well. Okay. Spoiler alert, they will talk about that. But the fact is, it's not supposed to be just hedonistic, just drinking, going crazy. We need to have bar mitzvahs without a bar. Okay, that's the old joke. So how are they celebrated? So let's get to brass tacks. All right. So a boy turns 13, and like I said, the entire world of mitzvot are at his fingertips. He's introduced to all the mitzvot, and at that point, he becomes bar mitzvah. So it's interesting. Back in, I think it must have been the 1950s, the term bar mitzvah became a verb. Like, I was bar mitzvahed, and with an ed at the end. I was bar mitzvahed at such a shul. This rabbi bar mitzvahed me, or something like that. That it's not a verb. Bar mitzvah is a noun. The boy becomes bar mitzvah just by being. When I was a bar mitzvah tutor, which I've been tutoring bar mitzvah boys for over a decade now, for sure. So one of the things I tell boys, one of the first questions I ask them is, what do you have to do to be bar mitzvah? And they usually have no idea. So it's kind of a rhetorical question anyway, but I wait for them to answer just for fun. And then I tell them, you know what you need to be? You need to have a pulse on your 13th birthday. And then you're bar mitzvah. You turn bar mitzvah, whether it's in shul, whether it's outside, whether it's in a forest, whether you're all alone or surrounded by a minyan, it doesn't matter. You are bar mitzvahed, if there could be such a thing. You are bar mitzvah just by being. You are bar mitzvah. You become a bar mitzvah by being alive on your 13th birthday. Whether you fulfill the mitzvah is a different question. That has to do with training. Now, as some of you know, some of the boys I've tutored didn't know Hebrew when I started tutoring them, and when they're 12. Some of them knew Hebrew but didn't want to do it, wanted to do it, wanted to do this, wanted to do that. There's all kinds of levels of what they're going to do at their bar mitzvah. And it usually takes, just so you know, in case you're planning one or know somebody who's planning one, it usually takes about a year of weekly lesson and train and practice for about a year to be able to do a bar mitzvah successfully, depending on what it is you want to do. Okay. Most of the people who don't know how to read Hebrew when they're 12, they're not the ones who are going to want to do all the mitzvot when they're 13. So you try to encourage them. You try to encourage them to come to shul, et cetera, et cetera. A very, very important part of bar mitzvah, and I can't say this enough. A very important part of being bar mitzvah, regardless of how much you're going to do afterwards, you have to go to shul at some point between when you started training and your actual bar mitzvah, or you'll have no idea what's going on. Right? If I teach you how to read the entire Torah, right? Forget about the parsha. I teach you the whole Torah from Bereshit all the way down to all the way through Devarim. Right? I teach you to read the entire Torah. If you come to shul ready to do any of the parsha, any of the Torah, you will have no idea when to read the Torah. You're just gonna what is the Torah? Right? Well, what is the Torah? You don't even know what it looks like if you've never been to shul. So you have to come to shul. That's one of my rules of tutoring bar mitzvah boys. You have to come to shul at least every once in a while. I'm not going to make you come every week, although some boys have used to come every week, and that was a beautiful thing for them, I think. But they usually stop afterwards. The old joke, it's probably worth repeating, especially now. The famous joke about how the rabbi and the priest and the minister, and they all got together about how to get rid of the mice in their different establishments. So the priest said, I throw some holy water on them and they run away and I never see them again. The minister, I don't know, the priest said, I don't know what he does, give them some crackers and wine and they go away. The rabbi said, no problem, I just give them a bar mitzvah, I never see the mice again. Right? So that's obviously unfortunately a very true joke. I can rattle off names of people whose bar mitzvahs I've been to and I've never seen again. Unfortunately, until unfortunately they usually need some sort of help for tragic reasons or whatever. God forbid should know of such things. But that's not what a bar mitzvah is. A bar mitzvah isn't just a ceremony to just say, I've been bar mitzvahed, I can go on with my life now. I'm now a man because I read the Torah on my 13th birthday. That's not the idea. That's become the idea. That's definitely how Hollywood portrays bar mitzvahs. In all the movies and shows, whenever there's a bar mitzvah, there's usually a big party, and usually there's a synagogue service, and that's it. And that's all that happens. I've actually heard of, I don't know of any of these particular cases, but I've actually heard of Gentiles who had a bar mitzvah also. Like not nothing Jewish about it. They have Jewish friends who had a big party on their 13th birthday. So they're wealthy too. They asked their parents to make them a big party on their 13th birthday. They call it a bar mitzvah. They dance with the hora during Hava Nagila, and they're bar mitzvah too. And they get lifted on a chair, and that's what they think is a bar mitzvah. And anybody can do it. Like, who says you can't? And really, if that is a bar mitzvah, they're right. Go ahead. Nothing's stopping you from sitting on a chair while people lift you while singing Hava Nagila, if that's all you want. So that happens, and that is not how Chazal envisioned a bar mitzvah. So I'm going to quote here from Rabbi Chaim Halevi Donen's To Be a Jew. If you have the book, it's on page 286. Oh, it's the first three digits of my old phone number. Everybody's old phone number. Everybody's 286 at some point in San Diego. Or 287. Okay. Anyway, whatever it is. So bar mitzvah, he says, is not a mystical ritual confirmation which somehow confers Jewishness upon the child, as indicated above. Previously, basically the same things I was saying. It is a religious legal term which implies a coming of age. This the child becomes whether or not he marks the occasion in any formal way. Right? You don't have to actually do anything. The synagogue honors extended to a bar mitzvah form part of the regular service and are no different than those which may be extended to any adult Jew on any other occasion. Marking one's bar mitzvah in the synagogue testifies at least to having had some basic religious instruction. In other words, when it comes to a bar mitzvah, what ceremony do we do in the synagogue for the bar mitzvah? And I'll give you, those of you who go to shul regularly know, nothing. It's absolutely the exact same service. I try to convince my bar mitzvah boys about this, right? To you, it's a big deal. To you, it's a big day. For everybody else, it's a regular Shabbat. It is. Okay, so maybe there's more people. Okay, maybe there's going to be fancier food or whatever. Maybe it's going to be a little bit longer. Maybe there's going to be an extra speech, but it's a regular day for everybody else. You had a question?
I was gonna say I like getting candy and throwing it on people.
Okay, but that's not really okay. We do that.
No, I know.
We do that, but that's not really a ceremony. You don't have to do it. We do it because it's it's actually not a bar mitzvah thing to do. By the way, maybe let's since you brought it up, let's address this issue. Throwing candy, the custom of throwing candy at a bar mitzvah boy actually is a transferring of a custom from another Jewish ceremony that we'll also talk about in the Jewish life cycles class. In fact, in a few classes from now, and that's the ufruf. Question?
We were just saying ufruf too.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's an ufruf. It comes from the Ashkenazic custom of the Shabbat before a groom is married. He gets an aliyah, and we throw candy at him. And one of the reasons we throw candy at him is we want him to be fruitful and multiply, kind of like the Goyish custom of throwing rice on the bride and groom. And another reason for that, there's a lot of other reasons for the custom. One of the famous reasons is we want to say we don't have an ayin hara against him, right? He's getting pelted with things. We want him to have a sweet life. That's another reason for the candy. It didn't always used to be candy. Like I said, it used to be rice, wheat, actually, not rice. Interestingly enough. But also for the same reasons we want them to be healthy and fruitful, etc. But that has not, as you think about it for a second, besides the ayin hara thing and the sweet life, there really is no reason to be throwing candy at a bar mitzvah boy. We do it because we don't have that many weddings in most communities, so there's a lot more bar mitzvahs usually. So that's just kind of the name of the game. But anyway, that's become the custom in a lot of places, and our synagogue is not immune to that. So I'm not saying we should abolish that, but at least don't take it too seriously. There have been times when I haven't gotten, well, usually because of where I'm standing, I don't usually get a candy to throw at the child anyway. But and I've heard of people getting upset, like, oh, I didn't get a candy to throw. I'm not fulfilling the mitzvah. It's ridiculous. There's no mitzvah. You don't have to throw candy. You don't have to peg the boy. You don't have to hurt him in any way, or welts on his face or anything. That's not the idea of throwing candy or anything like that. And aside from that, there is no other thing we do in shul that's different from how we usually do it, except for give him the opportunity to speak. So now there's two speeches instead of just the rabbi's usual speech. If you're awake enough to hear it, then there's also bar mitzvah speech. Okay. That's so that's really it. So again, there's no such thing as it's not a special ceremony for everybody else. Now, of course, we're happy for the child, especially if we know the child. Sometimes the bar mitzvah is it's fancily decorated. There's nothing wrong with that. The shul looks beautiful. There's nothing wrong with that. Of course, the shul should always be beautiful. But that's that's neither here nor there. Okay, so what the bar mitzvah boy does as part of his bar mitzvah depends on a lot of things besides community customs, which there are a lot of, a huge range. We think we know what a bar mitzvah is because we've been to so many, but honestly, the bar mitzvahs we've been to have been certain communities. I'll give you an example. Many of the bar mitzvahs we've been to, the boy learns how to read the Torah, right? To Lane. And Lane's the partial, some of it, maybe one aliyah, maybe the whole thing, whatever it is. Usually reads the Haftarah as well, the the part of the Nevi'im, the prophets, that's attached to each parsha, usually gets that aliyah. That's part of the custom of bar mitzvah. And he gives a speech. That's pretty much what it's pretty standard bar mitzvah fare for our community, right? That's pretty much all they do. Sometimes they lead services if they're comfortable enough doing it, if they've come regularly, that sort of thing. Okay, beautiful. Did you know that in, for instance, the Kollel community in Los Angeles, the boy never lanes. The boy never reads the Torah. That's just something they don't do. Why? Because they have a professional Baal Koreh, Rabbi Berkowitz. All right, so they have a professional Baal Koreh who does it beautifully and perfectly, and they don't bother with having a boy and embarrassing him, and usually they don't need to know it. Like in our community, we want a boy to know how to read the Torah because there might be times when we'll need him to read the Torah. But in most communities, there's a set Baal Koreh who reads the Torah all the time. And so unless, something unusual happens, he's going to be reading the Torah. And if he can't do it, he'll pass it on to somebody else or whatever. But there usually isn't a need in most big communities. There isn't a need for everybody to know how to lane. Which, I think it's nice for anybody to know how to do most things. You're sometimes stuck in situations, so the Baal Koreh could, God forbid, be sick, could have overslept, could be on vacation, who knows? And then it's Monday and Thursday, and you don't know what to do with the Torah. So it's always a good idea to at least have some basic skills in order to be able to be flexible and be available for all kinds of things. Whatever. Okay, so we're not going to get into all that. So that's part of chinuch. I think to teach a boy how to read the Torah, and anyway, everybody should know at least the tunes for the laning, because everybody, boys and girls, have a mitzvah called Shnayim Mikra V'Echad Targum, which we've mentioned before in all kinds of other classes. It's a mitzvah that I've sort of been pushing, and that is that everybody's obligated, boys and girls, obligated every week, aside from the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, everybody's obligated in reading the Torah twice. And twice in Hebrew, once in translation or commentary, I should say, and that's on everybody. And when you read the Torah on your own, you should read it in the tune that it's supposed to be in. There's reasons for the tunes. Besides the fact that there's different customs, there's an Ashkenazic tune, and a Sephardic tune, Moroccans. We're not going to get into all that. The fact is, there are different tunes, Kadmon Azla, and these sorts of things that actually add to the meaning of the verses. Not the time for this. That's a parsha class type topic, but just so you know, that's one of the things a bar mitzvah boy very often does, is learns to lane, at least in our community. Okay, so that's the laning. Another topic. So another topic is, I guess we should get right into it. The topic of the speech, the bar mitzvah speech, or as it's called in Yiddish, the pshetel, which is taken more seriously in certain communities. Now, what is the bar mitzvah speech? So in some communities, it is the main point of a bar mitzvah. Like the bar mitzvah boy doesn't lane. The boy gets an aliyah, but like everybody knows, 7 other guys got an aliyah. So, and then there's sometimes a meal, sometimes not, depending on how wealthy the family is. But what does a bar mitzvah boy do to express the fact publicly that he's bar mitzvah? He gives a speech, and that speech can be very significant. What do I mean? So, for example, again, the Kollel community in Los Angeles, when a boy is bar mitzvah, he's expected, ready for this, to give a speech in Yiddish on the Talmud. And not just a speech, but some sort of chidush, some sort of new insight that he came up with that nobody else had. So it's not like the bar mitzvah tutor sort of like fed him stuff to say, which sometimes happens in bar mitzvah tutoring sessions, right? It's not like the father wanted the boy to talk about a certain topic. the boy has to come up with on his own some sort of thing to say, and he has to say it intelligently in a foreign language, Yiddish. Right? This is Los Angeles. We're not talking about, they haven't been speaking. I mean, they know Yiddish from their childhood, and they go to yeshiva, whatever, cheder, whatever, for a long time to know Yiddish. It's true, but it's not their first language, really. It is a language that they know very well, and well enough, obviously, to give an intelligent discourse on a very deep Talmudic topic that they just came up with. It's a chidush, right? It's a brand new idea. So that's one example of a bar mitzvah speech. That's not what's expected, for instance, in San Diego. Obviously, if somebody got up and spoke in Yiddish, I'm pretty sure maybe 1% of us would understand some of it, and it would be particularly lost on everybody. It would be it might, in a sense, it would be an easier speech to give because nobody understands it. You can say whatever you want. Just a Baba might say Meshugana, just go on and on in a few Yiddish words, and it'll make do. But it's not going to say much about the Gemara and Baba Mitzia, about the Uchsen. All right, so you're not going to get into all that. All right, so the bar mitzvah speech usually in our communities has a lot more to do with the parsha. Before we talk about that, there's also a custom. Well, let's go to that next. The bar mitzvah speeches that we're mostly accustomed to are bar mitzvah speeches having to do with the parsha, and they usually have to have some sort of tie-in. You expect the speech to have some sort of tie-in to being an adult and being responsible and being a man, right? Today I am a man, right? That's the classic bar mitzvah speech right there. So the Rav Eliyahu Kitov writes that the Torah does not impose an obligation on the child to practice mitzvot. Obviously, that's part of chinuch. The child becomes a man on the day he reaches his 13th birthday, for a boy, obviously. With the appearance of the stars in the sky on the first night of his 14th year, he is bar mitzvah, subject to all of the mitzvot. So when it becomes nighttime on his 13th Hebrew birthday, his first mitzvah is going to be Kriya Shema, right? So saying Shema is going to be his the first time he says Shema is going to be and really be obligated in it is on his 13th birthday. And why does that happen? We talked about this a little bit in the last class, but it's worth repeating. It's because we say, Chazal tell us, Chazal is moving books already. All right, so the Chazal tell us that that a person becomes an ish, becomes a man on his 13th birthday, and when he becomes a man, he becomes enveloped. He becomes infused. That's the word I'm looking. He becomes infused with the Yetzer Hatov, the Yetzer Tov. All right. So Yetzer Tov and Yetzer Hara are very complicated topics that most people don't seem to understand very well. But let's make it very, very simple. All right. The Yetzer Hara is all about selfishness, about pleasures of the body, pleasures of this world, pleasures of physicality. That's the Yetzer Hara. And we are born with that, but it doesn't make us evil. In other words, we can use the Yetzer Hara for good. As the Pasuk tells us, Barati Yetzer Hara, Barati Torah Tavlin. Hashem says, I created the Yetzer Hara, and I created the Torah as its Tavlin, which we're going to translate as the spice. As the Torah, learning Torah helps you use the Yetzer Tov the Yetzer Hara that you have inside you already. It sort of spices it up so that you can use it for good. Right? Every single mitzvah can be enjoyed. Now, we're not supposed to do mitzvot to enjoy them. That's not what mitzvot were created for. However, we are capable of doing mitzvot in a way that gives us pleasure, and that's what we do when we're children, right? Why does a child um, bring food to their parent? Do they really feel like this hakarat hatov? Do they really feel gratitude to their parents for working, for having them, for feeding them? No, of course not. They can't appreciate what it means that the parents go away for 8 hours a day to go to work. They don't know what it means. They don't understand it. So why are they doing this nice thing for their parents? Why are they bringing them food? Because they want that smile from their parent. They want the pat on the back. They want to be allowed some sort of privilege, TV show, or a cookie or whatever it is. They want those things. So I scratch your back, you scratch mine, kind of idea, right? So I'll do nice things for you. And at that age, at the very, very young age, that's okay, right? We want them to do nice things. Why they do it, what's their kavanah, what's their intent, that's not our first priority. That's actually our second priority. Once we have them accustomed to doing nice things for us, nice things for others, nice things for everybody, and in general being nice, good people, now you hit them with, now you do it for not yourself, right? Now with the maturity that comes with older age, now you do things selflessly, and in fact, sometimes you sacrifice your own needs for others. Right? That doesn't come naturally for everybody. It comes naturally for some, but in general, you need to train children to do that. Those people who do mitzvot, who do it because they want to be praised, they want their name on some plaque or something like that, or they want people to think of them nicely. That's not the reason to do mitzvot. That's a reason to do mitzvot. That's not the Yetzer Hatov reason to do mitzvot. We want to do mitzvot, and not even for people not even to know we did them. Right? The ideal way to, for instance, to give tzedakah is not to even publicize that you're doing it. To find somebody a job, and for them not to know that you did that. You hooked them up with the connection that got them the job, or the business connection, or whatever. That's all part of being selfless and teaching the child to think of others before themselves. That's part of the strength that we talk about when we say that a man is supposed to have strength. What's a gibor? What's a strong man? Hakovish et Yisro, who conquered his Yetzer. There's that word again, right? His Yetzer hara, that wants somebody, that wants us, that Yetzer hara in us, that wants us to do selfish things. Conquering that makes us strong. The gibor, that's another word for the grown-up. A gibor is a grown-up, right? A man, a woman is somebody who is able to overcome that Yetzer hara. And that's what we say when a boy becomes bar mitzvah. And that's why, as we've mentioned in the last week's class, somebody asked a question about this, but this is the place to make it very clear. There's a bracha that a father says during the Torah reading on the boy's bar mitzvah. And that's a bracha, Baruch Sheptarani. Thank you, Hashem, for dissolving my obligation of taking care of this boy. That doesn't mean I am no longer required to take care of the boy. Obviously, he's still, if he stops feeding him, the boy's going to go hungry, right? I don't know how much bar mitzvah money this kid's getting, but he's probably going to still need his parents. So the fact is, the Baruch Sheptarani is a blessing that the father says because there's a midrash in Bereshit Rabbah, back in Bereshit. I know it's old news already. We're in Shemot now. So there's a midrash that says, Rabbi Eliezer said, a father is obligated to occupy himself with the upbringing of his son till he becomes 13 years old. After that, he should say Baruch Sheptarani. Thank you, Hashem, who has freed me from the liability of this one. And the meaning of this bracha, that the father is responsible for the misdeeds of his minor son, since they are the result of what? Of a lack of his proper training, right? Obviously, if the son is robbing and stealing and hitting people, obviously the parents didn't teach him right. Not so obviously, right? Obviously, there's exceptions to this. But if you see your child misbehaving, you're supposed to stop it, and effectively, not just like they're supposed to know that they're doing the wrong thing. But until that point, when the child is doing wrong things while the child is not bar mitzvah yet, before they get the Yetzer Hatov, at that point, it's the father's responsibility. And once the child becomes bar mitzvah, we say this bracha because the father is happy that he's no longer responsible for the misdeeds, really, of this child. So that's sort of like a negative / positive event of a bar mitzvah. And again, that's part of what a bar mitzvah entails, is this new infusion of the Yetzer Hatov and the opportunities that this person now has to be strong and to be responsible for their own actions. Now, there are different opinions about when this meal for the bar mitzvah boy should happen. But let's just say that there's supposed to be a bar mitzvah meal. Some say that it's a sudat mitzvah. It's an obligation, and it's a mitzvah to go to such a thing. The Aruch HaShulchan brings the Yam Shel Shlomo, who says this. When the bar mitzvah meal happens, at least in our communities, seems to be always on the Shabbat of the bar mitzvah, or the Saturday night, or the Sunday night following. In older times, and in some communities still today, the bar mitzvah meal is actually the week before the Shabbat of the bar mitzvah. So it's a whole week earlier. I don't know the reason for that. Honestly, I've tried to look into it. It does not make sense to me. It's probably why people don't do that anymore. But it's typical, by the way, even in communities where birthdays are celebrated, it's typical not to celebrate a birthday before the birthday. It's sort of like an ayin hara or whatever. So usually, in such cases, the celebration is after the event or during the event, certainly not before the event. So I don't know why there's this custom. I don't know the rationale behind it, but maybe somebody else can look into it and help me find an answer. But anyway, like I said, most communities, that's not the case. It's usually on the Shabbat. Usually the boy, the bar mitzvah boy, should be obligated and should expect to lead the benching, to lead the Birkat HaMazon, this is his first opportunity really to do to lead the Mezuman. A Mezuman is a mitzvah, by the way, separate mitzvah. In any time you're saying Birkat HaMazon, there's 3 men who ate together, or 2 men who ate together and 1 man who ate something else, maybe didn't eat bread. They are obligated in joining together to say Birkat HaMazon together. Obviously, the person who didn't have bread should not say Birkat HaMazon. He makes whatever after bracha he needs to make. But that's a separate obligation. A lot of people don't know, and I don't know why it's not so well advertised, but women who eat together, if there's 3 women who eat together and there's no man, they are also obligated in a mezuman. So I would say, now this is not a chiddush of mine, I have seen this in print. It seems to me logical that back in our bat mitzvah class, we should have mentioned that if there's going to be 3 or more women eating together at the meal at the suda of the bat mitzvah, and we talked about that there are people who have a suda for the bat mitzvah, whether it's Shabbat or whether it's on the Sunday afterwards, a brunch, whatever it is, the bat mitzvah girl, should lead the mezuman. Right? It's her first opportunity to do that. It's a mitzvah upon her. Look at Shulchan Aruch 99 if you want to look. Tzadi Tet if you want to look it up. Women are, it's very clear, black and white, according to Sephardim, Ashkenazim. There's an obligation for women who say Birkat HaMazon to have a mezuman if there's no men present. Anecdotally, some of you know, my wife and I were once dorm parents for the high school here, and many years ago. Wow, yeah, like 20 years ago. Time flies. Anyway, so we were dorm parents, and for the girls, and so I was the only guy at the meal, and some of the girls wanted to sing, and I encouraged them to lead the benching. So what would I do? I would bench on my own, and then walk around the block for a couple of, for an hour or whatever, and let the girls sing, have a mezuman, whatever. So that's just one of the things that very important for girls to know, that they have this obligation. I don't know how we threw that into bar mitzvah, but anyway, back to bar mitzvah celebration. The another very important mitzvah that's tied into bar mitzvah is the mitzvah of tefillin, phylacteries, or as David Orlovsky points out, Jews are the only people who know the English word for tefillin anyway. So tefillin or phylacteries, it doesn't really make a difference. It's the same thing. So the tefillin is a mitzvah from the Torah. It's obligated on men. They are obligated to wear tefillin. So the custom used to be that people would wear tefillin basically all day long. As long as the sun was out, people would walk around and sit around in tefillin. Obviously, if they needed to go to the bathroom, they took them off. The problem is, I'm not going to get into details. I think whoever needs to know already knows, and whoever doesn't need to know doesn't need to know the details. But basically, wearing tefillin has a lot of obligations on somebody to control their physical functions. They can't go to the bathroom. They can't even need to go to the bathroom while wearing them. It's the body becomes a holier vessel, the way the Rav Moshe Feinstein explains it. The body becomes a holier vessel when tefillin are on the body. So that being said, because especially children are not always in control of their physical functions as much, are not able to concentrate on that sort of thing. So therefore, children are exempt from tefillin. A man is supposed to be able to control themselves under most conditions, unless they have some sort of illness, and then they might be exempt. But under ordinary circumstances, a man is obligated in wearing tefillin as soon as he becomes a man. So bar mitzvah boy starts wearing tefillin. When does a bar mitzvah boy start wearing tefillin? And that's when we're going to get into all kinds of different opinions. Some people say a month before, some people say 2 months before, some people say 6 months before, but or some people say a week before, some people say just the day before. Why before? Why not just on? Well, first of all, a lot of times the bar mitzvah is on Shabbat, so you don't wear tefillin on Shabbat anyway. But that's not really the reason. The main reason is because all of that is supposed to prepare you for wearing tefillin. The first few times that a boy puts on tefillin, let me tell you, it takes a long time. I remember one child, it was actually somebody visiting. I brought them to, they were from out of town, and they needed, the boy needed a ride to shul for his first day. It was 2 months before, I think 1 month before his bar mitzvah. So he needed a ride to shul to put on tefillin for the first time. So I volunteered to do that. So I brought him, and I got him here on time. And by the time he finally finished tying his tefillin, we were almost done davening. Right? It takes a long time. They have to know where to tighten, where not to tighten. The tefillin aren't supposed to be loose. They're supposed to be, all 7 stripes that are on the arm aren't supposed to touch each other. Right? So it's not always easy. And it's supposed to be rather tight, and it takes practice. So that's why we start doing it a month or 2, or sometimes 6 in advance of the bar mitzvah, because we want them to have practice, so that when they are obligated in the mitzvah, they're able to do it correctly. Where the head tefillin goes, it's supposed to be center, it's supposed to be above the hairline. There's all kinds of rules about where it goes, how it's made. And I very much encourage anybody who knows a bar mitzvah boy or future bar mitzvah boy to take the boy on a tour to the sofer who's making the tefillin, so that they see the process. What is it? What is this box? What's inside, etc. For my son's bar mitzvah, should have brought pictures. For my son's bar mitzvah, we took him to sofer atiyah. Different stages along the way, so he'd see how the compartments are made, what they're made out of, what goes into them, the whole difference between Rashi tefillin, Rabbeinu Tam tefillin. All of that is something that a bar mitzvah boy can be excited about. That this is this cool mitzvah. It's the process is so amazing, so exciting, and so when they start doing it, it's something that they're going to want to do the rest of their life. That's the idea of a bar mitzvah. These are things we want them to do forever. Obviously, if we, like I said, if we just bombard them with these mitzvot in a way that just it seems like a burden, they're not going to want to do it, and it's they're going to be jealous of the kids who are having their bar mitzvah in like the disco club. So we don't want that. All right, so we talked about the speech. We talked about the day of the bar mitzvah. No, we haven't talked about the day of the bar mitzvah. Wow, we missed that. When should the bar mitzvah be? So that's usually one of the first questions that the parents ask when they bring the boy for a lesson, and the answer is it depends on when the boy's birthday is. So if the boy you find out the boy's Hebrew birthday, or you can usually convert it from the English, from the Gregorian birthday, you can translate it into the Hebrew birthday. Then you find out when that birthday is this coming year, whatever the 13th year of the boy's birth, and then you find out what parsha is that week, if there's a parsha. For example, if you recall, just a few months ago was my nephew's bar mitzvah, and his bar mitzvah was on Sukkot, right? And that's because that was his birthday. Yeah, and so the laning that I taught him, the reading that I taught him, tutored him in, was not that week's. It was that particular day's, because he laned on the first day of the holiday. It's a particularly good laning to learn, by the way, because it's very useful. It's a saying that the first day of Sukkot is also the second day of Sukkot, same laning, and it's the, I think, second day of Pesach, and other holidays as well. It's a holiday laning, so it's a very useful and practical one to know if you're ever going to be stuck in a place where there isn't somebody who already knows how to read. If that occurs, so that's one thing. Now there are some exceptions to that rule. For example, there are certain Shabbatot that are holiday, or the reading of the Torah is a rabbinic enactment. The public reading of the Torah is rabbinic, but sometimes there are certain parshiot which are considered are not rabbinic. They are from the Torah. For example, Parshat Zachor. They're reminding ourselves about the terrible things Amalek did to us. So that Parshat Zachor is supposed to be read on the Shabbat before Purim, right? Not Purim Katan, not the first Adar, second Adar, right? Like this year. So the bar mitzvah boy who has the obligation to read that week, in theory, the halacha is he should not read the Parshat Zachor. He should not read the Mafti, even though the Mafti is usually the last aliyah is the one that the bar mitzvah boy usually reads in those communities where he reads anything at all. When it's Parshat Zachor, the custom is not to have a bar mitzvah boy do it. Why is that? And the reason is rather legalistic, so I'm going to try to be brief about it. Basically, we're not entirely sure that the boy is bar mitzvah. What do I mean? So to be bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, besides having the age of 12 or 13, depending on if you're a girl or a boy, you're also supposed to have certain physical signs. Now, because we believe in this thing called tzniut, of modesty, we're not going to check the boy or the girl for these physical signs. We don't have to like probe and prod them to see if they're sexually mature. So because of that, we basically take it as a given that they're probably mature at that age. And so we don't need to find out. We don't need to investigate. For most things, for like these dirabanan, these rabbinic enactments, like reading the Torah. But if it becomes a halachic, like Torah obligation to read Parshat Zachor, now we need to be 100% sure that this is an adult male, right? To read that parsha, and so therefore we don't give him that aliyah. That's to avoid embarrassing him, and so that's become the custom and the halacha in most communities. I think we had a situation not so long ago where somebody was bar mitzvah on Parshat Zachor, and I don't remember what we concluded, but whether the boy read Zachor or not, or whether somebody read it afterwards. Anyway, there are communities, by the way, this is not a Parshat Zachor class, but there are communities where Parshat Zachor is read by several people. And there's a minyan I used to frequent where Parshat Zachor, anybody who wanted to could go up and read it after the person, without saying the brachot. One person would say the brachot in the beginning, and then anybody who wanted to could come up and read it, and then he said the after bracha afterwards. The person who had the actual aliyah. So anyway, that way you could be sure it was read correctly, and that you fulfill the obligation of Parshat Zachor. I don't know. I'm not saying that that's the halacha. That's just a custom in that particular place. As Rabbi Donen concludes, the nature and extent of the festivities which accompany the bar mitzvah are a matter of local custom and a reflection of the personal taste and or the means of the family. They may range from simple refreshments following the synagogue service to the most elaborate of feasts of the following day, where the festivities are held in such a way as to violate not only the spirit of Judaism, but also its specific precepts and values. The celebration only tends to secularize the event, cheapening the religious significance in the eyes of the guests, but especially so in the eyes of the young man himself. As the years go by, a serious and intelligent young man will rightly look back upon such a celebration as a religious mockery. It also behooves parents to resist the temptations to turn a bar mitzvah into a gala, ostentatious birthday party for a 13-year-old. So, in other words, as I was implying before, the bar mitzvah, as we often see nowadays, is not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be this beautiful, holy event where the child is encouraged in this beautiful way to keep doing mitzvah, to become a part of the community. I don't know if this is the place for to mention this, but being a part of a community is no small thing. The synagogue is not the center of Jewish life. The home is, but if you're all by yourself in your home, fenced off from everybody else, you're not living a completely Jewish life. You don't know who needs your help. You don't know who needs your prayers. You're not involved in these kinds of classes, whether it's online or in person. You're just learning on your own. Who knows if you're reading it right or you're understanding it correctly? Who knows if you're remembering the main things or if you even know what the main things are? Having a community is a very important thing. And the bar mitzvah and the bat mitzvah, the focus should be, my opinion, maybe, or maybe this is what we've been kind of saying, but it's like sort of the elephant in the room. The focus should be, you are now a member of the community. You are now not just obligated in the mitzvot. The minyan now counts on you. If there's 9 people in the room and you walk in, as I tell this to my bar mitzvah tutorees, right? There's 9 men in the room and you walk in, bang, there's a mitzvah. There's a minyan in the room. You've made the minyan. You've brought the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah is now in the room thanks to you. You that one person, you You've just made it so that there's a Shekhinah in the room. People can say Yehi Shmei Rabbah. There can be Baruch Hu. There can be a Torah reading. There can be a repetition of the Shemona Esrei. There's all the things that happen when there's a minyan can now happen with this 13-year-old, forgive the phrase, pisher, right? He's a little kid. He's barely got any facial hair, and he's a man now, and he can make the Shekhinah come into the room just by walking in. So it's an amazing obligation, an amazing thing, and we should celebrate such a thing. We shouldn't celebrate it in a crazy way that takes away from that. We should celebrate in a way that he enjoys it, he appreciates it, and that he continues to do mitzvot ad me'av esrim shana. Our next class in this series, I'm not sure if it's next week or the week after, is going to be on dating and marriage. We're getting up to that stuff already. So if you know of anybody who needs who might need a refresher course, who needs maybe it's a segula to learn about, it's an interesting thing. I don't know if it's related. I'll bring it up. They say, a lot of people say that it's a segula. It's a good sign to learn about something that you need help in, or that the parsha that you're in, the part of your life that you're in. For instance, if you're God forbid having trouble having children, if you learn about parenting, you learn about chinuch, and you get books on the topic, et cetera, et cetera. It's supposed to be a segula that it should help that you should have children. Anecdotally, again, in my own life, just before when I was dating, and it was not easy to date in San Diego. There was hardly any religious girls here. I had to go to LA. I had to, back then we had to make phone calls with telephones. It's a whole other technology, right? And you didn't know who you were talking to. You didn't see their picture because it wasn't online, because there was no such thing as online, unless you're talking about fish. Those were on a line. But aside from that, there's nothing else online. And so you had no idea who you were talking to, et cetera, et cetera. So very, very, so I was kind of nervous about this whole dating situation, as most people are, as they should be. And so one of the things that happened was I got a book, I got a sefer to learn the laws of yichud, laws of there's laws about boys and girls, whether they can be indoors, out in the same room, and how long they can be in, and what situations, etc. So there's a lot of laws about that. And within a couple of days of cracking open that book and starting to learn it, I met the person who became my wife. So I don't think it's a coincidence. It's important to learn. So if you know anybody who needs who's looking into shidduchim and things like that, encourage them to learn about shidduchim, whether in this class or many of the other sources that are available, not like a fish, online. All right. So with that said, I'm going to stop the live feed to Facebook and the recording. If I'm recording, and I am.